What's up, bikers? I'm Robert. This is the B1KER Bar Podcast, episode 123. Those of you guys that are watching, you can see that I'm not in the normal studio. It's 107 or some ridiculous number outside right now. So I'm inside with the air conditioner because, like my college professor said, the reason you go to college is for air conditioning. Anyways, Here we are going to have TrailForks on episode 123. I'm really stoked to have this conversation. Those of you guys that have been following for a while, you guys know what's coming right now. If you could do me a favor, swing by my Instagram or my Facebook, give me a follow over there. That would be awesome. I really appreciate that. And seeing those numbers grow, as well as like the thumbs up and the subscribes on this channel, make me happy. So it's not that much effort. And you get a little more insight into what's going on with the podcast, as well as the biker channel itself. And outside of that, if you want to really help support the channel, if you want to help keep the beer fridge full or buy the new camera, I picked up the new Rode Go wireless set today so that I can do in-person interviews even better. And that happens because the guys on Patreon, guys and gals, everybody on Patreon, they are the ones that are making that happen. So if you want to help out the channel, it's as little as $1 a month or $5 a month, or you could actually send me $1,000 a month. I don't really care. It's up to you. I would appreciate anything. With all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest back on. We got Todd. How's it going, Todd?
I'm doing good.
Living the dream, right?
Yeah. As much as I can, I guess. Yeah.
I got a buddy that always says nightmares are dreams too, man.
Yeah, I heard that.
Right. So if you want to go ahead and give me a little introduction of what you do at TrailForks, that way people understand who you are, and then we can go from there, right?
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm the product manager for TrailForks, the product, app, web, all that. I began from the beginning. So the TrailForks application, the web, everything was kind of multiple people working together. And but it was initially us kind of doing our own thing. And so I was doing my own website, interactive website here where I live in Utah, and had another guy up in Squamish, Canada, doing the same thing. And we kind of came together, and then Pink Bike picked us up. And 2014, we kind of launched effectively.
Uh-huh.
But we were actually around before then. And so I've been doing this with them the whole time and before.
So how'd you get into bikes?
I grew up in Palo Alto, California, where biking was kind of crazy. Palo Alto Bicycles, Skyline Road. And so it was really big there, mostly fire roads, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a spring chicken. So we were mostly doing that kind of crazy kind of riding. Wasn't like great single track, but yeah, so I guess I've been doing it for a long time. Just I was one of those kids in high school way back then that even wore spandex, got really into it, you know.
Yeah.
This is like late 80s. Like that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I started mountain biking in the early 90s. So, I mean, I was definitely like the BMX crew in the late 80s. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was biking, yeah, for me, like building sketchy jumps on my sister's bike. But like mountain biking was more high school for me. So it's like early 90s. First time I would go up the fire roads around Arastadero and in the Bay Area up to like Skyline, was 91 and 92. And then we jump in the reservoir. You can't do that anymore. Yeah, it's all gated off and it's impossible now. But we were
mountain biking was a lot different back then.
Yeah, for sure.
It was like, a top of the line bike was still all rigid,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my bike was all fully rigid back then. I can't remember my first full suspension bike was a ProFlex. I don't know if you remember. It was an elastomer shock. It wasn't.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
right. It's like that was full suspension. It was my first one, and I'm trying to think back how far along that was. 95, 96. Yeah. My brother-in-law still has that bike.
That's awesome, actually. The bike that my first real mountain bike, let's say, was this old Giant. And I took a break from riding for a while, like I had young kids and stuff like that. And when I came back, I like sent a message to my grandma. That's where the bike was at. I was like, hey, send that out to my house. And it got there, and I was like, man, this thing's just a piece of garbage. I ended up putting it out on the street with a free sign. Somebody took it in like 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And I wish now that I would have kept it, because it would have been a cool bike to kind of like turn into a single speed, or,
Right.
you know, like your around town bike or something that you didn't really care too much about, just for like nostalgic purposes. But
Right.
it
I
is.
still think about doing that sometimes, you know, but you're still stuck with that geometry. Whatever the geometry would have been, it would have been, you know, the quill step. You can kind of like, I always thought about getting something like that, just a hardtail, like a chameleon or something, and then putting all the Ritchie polished, you know, parts on it. It kind of looks that way, but then I still got the geometry, right? That's kind of
yeah, definitely. I bought a chameleon a few years ago, and that was a really, really fun bike.
Right.
So along the way, then you're obviously you were into cycling from a young age. Then what was it that made you decide to start doing that website that, you know, kind of pulled it out together?
So it kind of depends on who you ask at TrailForks. I can tell you a little bit about some of the other guys too, but from my story is I actually started my own interactive mountain bike website in 2009 here in Utah. And I did that because initially, like here in Utah, there's a website called utahmountainbiking.com. And that kind of was really the OG of all the mountain biking information. But like anything back then, it suffered from just seeing each regional area. And the thing I really wanted to do was like, how can I ride from Park City to my house? Right. I had to connect like 3 maps and you know, these really long distances where I want to see how, because you can only see, it was always trail systems. Right. And that was the first thing. And so I was like, but back then there was no apps, there was web, and Google Maps had come out with just like their first mapping API. And I was a software engineer. I was actually doing fiber optic management and stuff. So I was already doing map development, spatial development. And so my first version was like, well, I just need to have this on my Garmin. So I started building a Garmin map. This was all a Garmin map. And I actually started selling it at the local bike shop. And they were selling it for $50 a pop for my Garmin base map that would go on like a 701. I can't remember the names of those old black and white computers, right? And then
people, I have
remember those? A big one with the joystick. It's like a
okay. With the joy, I don't remember the joystick. I think the first one I had was like the Edge 300 or something like that.
Oh, okay. I think this was before. Maybe I don't remember.
Yeah, it must have been before that because I don't remember the joystick.
Yeah, they actually had really good GPSs even back then in there. So yeah, so I made a map for the shop, and then people would come in the shop and be like, "Yeah, I know the Garmin already has trails," and I'm like, "No, you don't understand. They don't. Like they have like 1 or 2. Like they're horrible. Those old maps back then had no trails." And I was like, "This is data from all the Utah trails, of like the real trails." And then people still didn't believe me. So I was like, "Well, I'm going to show them." So I created a online web map with all the trail data.
So you would just go out and ride it and then use your GPX files to like upload, or how were you getting this
So the bike shop was utahmountainbiking.com, and they actually had been tracking them and to put them on their website. So they just gave me a hard drive full of like 10 years of GPS tracks from like the very first versions of Garmin's and GPS and I bought it from them actually. And so I was like, I'm going to sell this map, so I'll buy it from you. And I bought that data from them. And then we cut a deal where I was like, well, let's just split the money for selling the Garmin map. And so we did that. And so I took all their data, and then I put the map on their website, and I was like, this is what's on the Garmin. And everyone's like, yeah, that's nice, but that's nice about the Garmin part, but I just want to see these trails online. Like I can't believe this. You've got everything. And it was all color coded by difficulty because he had already their website had determined and rated what was difficult and what was not. And so I did this first version. And this was kind of, by the time I got it developed, I think it was about maybe 2010. And so then I was like, wow, well, this is what people really want. And so I started to cultivate relationships around the area. So people in Arizona, people in Colorado, people in Arizona, Nevada, everything were in my area. And I started collecting more and more data because they saw what we were doing and they wanted to add to the map. Now, at the same time, a developer in Squamish, or he was actually in Vancouver at the time, was doing the same thing, and his website was called TrailForks. My website was actually called Skid Map. That's what I called it. Okay. And so he was doing the same thing, and I was building like a little route builder and all this stuff, and he emailed me and was just like, how do you do this and how do you do that? And I was like, oh, you're doing the same thing. I was like, oh, this is cool. I had no plans to do this in Canada. I was just like, oh yeah, I do it this way. And we started comparing notes. And then there was a point where you probably remember that IMBA teamed up with like the mountain project thing, and they started pushing their map. And I had a bunch of contributors that just kind of fell off my radar. And they're like, oh, well, your map's really cool, and I love the interactive. It's really great, but I think I'm going to help out IMBA because they're a nonprofit. And I mean, I wasn't making any money at the time, but
yeah, so you're like, I'm nonprofit too.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not making. Yeah, I sold my road bikes so I could pay to do this. Right, I wasn't giving up my mountain bikes, but I sold my road bikes, and I was just like, well, I don't have this kind of like backing at all to support this and to get more contributors. And then so the Trevor May, who is the person who developed the original TrailForks website, reached out to me and was like, well, if you're not going to do this, you should join us. And so we all kind of went underground and got things together. And they effectively pulled in my data. Some of my kind of the tech, I kind of did submit like back then. People don't realize the evolution, but there was a time when all these interactive maps didn't have any labels on the trail. They were interactive, but you couldn't actually see the name of the trail on the map, right? So I had done some early development for that and things like that. So we combined forces to get a map together and to launch TrailForks, and it was backed by Pinkbike at the time. So,
So was it all like GPX kind of stuff, or were you guys using some kind of GIS for that, or?
Yeah, so my system was I was keeping everything in PostgreSQL. So it was all in Postgres, like a database, right? And what we would do. So from the start, all of us have always used open source tools, and the reason for that is, I mean, there's a lot of people that use Esri and those ArcGIS and that kind of thing to manage these large systems. But we found that with the open source tools, we were all developers, and if we wanted to do something different or special or specific, which we were doing a ton of that. Like there were so many times when we were just like, nobody does this. We're just going to write it ourselves. Just like the labels. No one has labels on their trails. We're going to write it ourselves, And so we would use these tools, fork the projects, and then we would develop and make our own versions of stuff. So that's how we do it.
Yeah, totally. Plus it's cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, none of us had money. In fact, even Pinkbike bringing in TrailForks, they originally bought my site, but at that point, I was effectively a volunteer. They were paying me a little bit, maintenance, kind of to do some stuff, but I worked for Pinkbike TrailForks working on this for probably 4 or 5 years and effectively not getting paid.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like a side gig thing for you.
Yeah, it was like you said.
Yeah,
the founder of Pinkbike called it my bike fund. He's like, "This is your bike fund." This just enabled me to keep buying new bikes, get my own bikes.
Right.
I didn't have to explain it to the wife.
No, totally. I mean, that's what my YouTube channel is right now.
Right.
I only need like 1,000 more people on Patreon, then maybe it'll be more than that. So,
right, sounds good.
So, you talked about a guy in Squamish and a guy and yourself in Utah. Then were the other two guys like geographically somewhere else? Because I think you said originally it was 4, right?
Yeah, 4, and then the founder of Pinkbike, who was Radek Burkhat, he actually brought it all together under the Pinkbike umbrella so that he could make it real, put a little money behind it. And so what happened was we had like a main contributor person who was gathering all the data. And then that person switched to another person, and then they pulled the main Pinkbike developer who was developing all the little tools and things in the back end of Pinkbike, and they brought him over to work on TrailForks. So when we all got it started, we had 3 developers, and we had the kind of the content manager contributor. He kind of just managed all the data and curated the data and worked with all the trail associations. And we did so much outreach work to work with trail associations. And a lot of it was a lot of the main issue with the mountain bike trail stuff going public is so many illegal trails, so much illegal data. And even today, OpenStreetMap and other things like that are just covered with that kind of data. And so,
yeah, because when it first started, you guys were just taking like submissions from riders, right?
Well, we were submissions. People would just submit. They'd go ride and they'd submit. And we didn't have an app at the time when we first started. They would record with their GPX, and we had a way for people to submit and contribute. So part of the development before we launched was,
but you didn't really have like a way that you would be vetting it as like, this is a legit trail. It was just like,
the only way was this. So this is what we did is initially we created kind of a GIS system of our own. That was part of the launch. And people could come in and start to contribute. And then we had a trust scores, right? So you would basically, like, if they contributed enough data and it was approved by the content manager, then they would get a higher trust score, and then their edits could go through. That was the beginning. We get so many submissions now that we have an entire hierarchy of regional people that in different areas that moderate that. And a lot of it's, again, back to the privacy issue. Places that are very sensitive, especially in big destinations like Moab, Park City, they moderate it. They subscribe to any edit, any notification, and they make sure that anything going on there or being changed will be legit. Some of these guys, they're on that site within minutes of a trail being updated or changed to be sure that it's not illegal.
Is there some kind of group that you can join when you're on the TrailForks website where you're like, hey, I want to be notified anything like pops up in my area or something?
Yeah, for sure. You can go into your settings on your account, and you can list any of the things that you want to get notifications for. By default, I believe we send out like when conditions change, but you can say, oh, in this area, I want to know if a new trail was added, edited, a new route was added, edited, and the trail associations, they subscribe to all that for their specific.
I see.
So they know for sure. And it helps keep the data legit. And that's one thing the trail associations, really like about it. But, at the end of the day, a lot of these trail associations at the same time, they want to see what's on there and they'll comment and that kind of thing. But they're often just digging. They're out there digging trails, driving a truck. And a lot of them, they love the fact that they don't even have a computer. They're like, oh, I just check my email in the morning, or I check it on my phone. Yeah. They're not going to go in there and edit trails. That's where we have to have staff that actually adds the data, fixes it. Like one complaint with people saying, oh, you guys are taking data people give you and then you're selling it. Honestly, we have, like, if you look at the bulk of the data, it's contributed by not a ton of people. And you don't realize that a lot of those we do pay on the side. And then of those, either we support them in other ways, or and then when it does come into our staff, it's a ton of work to connect it, make sure it's legit. And how many people know a trail is good for hiking, biking, can motos go on it? They don't always know those things. They just submit the trail. So we have to go then research it, figure out all those different aspects. Oh, they got the direction wrong. Oh, they didn't connect it. This is not, we have to go do all that. And then we have to go revisit these areas constantly to make sure that they're up to date and that everything's connected. And
I think that people are going to complain about paying for anything no matter what, because
for sure,
the internet just set this standard initially where like everything's free, and then reality came about, right? And it's like, oh well, servers cost money, and the time that it takes to program costs money, and I want to feed my kids and myself, and like all of those things come into play, and okay, well, it makes sense, as long as the content is worth the cost, then I mean it'll work itself out, right? So
yeah,
if you set the cost too high, nobody will use it. Somebody else will come out with something else, and so like I don't know, that to me is like, I guess, capitalism, but
yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, if people really knew what the four kind of us went through for the last 8 years to make this happen, and the amount of, we were paying for stuff ourselves. We so many things. So when we finally were like, and honestly, when the paywall came up, it was a little bit of a do or die. Not exactly, but what happened was COVID hit, because this was we brought up the paywall in 2020. Hit. Yeah. What was really interesting was the pattern of usage of the site changed. you suddenly had all these people that didn't know about trails, didn't know where to look, and they were just panning around all over the place. And we were getting so many tile loads that we were like suddenly getting these bigger bills for like, it's like, oh, what's your elevation bill from the Google elevation service? It's like, it's a couple $100. And then this month it's like, oh, it's $6,000 this month. Like, wait, what happened? It's suddenly you just, we're like, wait, what? I mean, we ended up going out and then I wrote our own elevation service just to cut out that bill. I was like, well, it's worth it for me now to just write that service. And
what's the service? What's the elevation service? What's that mean?
So like if you want to, if someone submits a trail and there's no data for the elevation, we need to draw the profile, right? Okay. So we have to go get that data from somewhere. And anybody who provides an elevation service, in other words, you say, what is the elevation for this polyline, or what is the elevation?
Yeah. Here's this GPX coordinate.
It returns it. Now you can go do that on a lot of websites, here and there, but you'll reach your quota fast when you're like a TrailForks. And then now you add to that we provide all of our data to Garmin that comes on the edge units, right? And we have to clean all the data to make sure it connects really well so that their routing works. And when we do that, we have to pre-assign every single point with a GPS point, an elevation point, so that they can paint the graphic before you ride. Like the Garmin will show you the elevation for a trail or a route before you ride it. So it all has to be there. So every time we clean that data, we have to run every single trail through the elevation service. And so it was just cost prohibitive. And so we wrote our own service.
When you guys first started, you had some of your own like local data. How do you go from like your local data to national data? Like, did you collect that for a while, like under the table, or was it like, hey, these are the only sections that we have right now, submit some stuff and eventually your area will be there?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there's two pieces to it. One was sites like mine. Pinkbike came in and said, oh, you guys have a lot of data on your site. You have trails for all over these 4 or 5 states. What will it cost? We'll buy it from you. We want to buy it. Right. And so, and it was a destination too. Park City, Moab. Right. And the data I had was better than anything out there at the time. And so, and I used to go down to, my son used to play soccer tournaments in the winter down in Vegas. So I had all that mapped out really well. And so they bought all that. And then we did some things with other sites, same kind of thing. But once we had these big destinations built out, then a lot of times we'd research, and we'd ask for it, tell people to record it, send it in. And we started curating it that way. But
was the site live at that point? Like,
what was that?
Was like TrailForks site live, and you were just adding it in as you could get it?
Yeah.
Or was it like?
There.
Okay.
Yeah, because so this is what. Okay, so here's
so like when you first started, let's just say I logged in and I'm in Northern California, there would be nothing, but there would be like a link or something that would say, hey, if you want to submit something, go for it, bud.
Yeah, you kind of had to start with something like that. A lot of areas were empty at the beginning, and then some areas were, of course, stronger than others as far as content. So here's an example. I noticed TrailForks going global and starting to do this and starting to add data on the back, because I knew Trevor, we'd already talked. And so I reached out and I was like, you guys are downloading some of my data. At the time I didn't really put anything on there like proprietary or copyright. I just let anybody download it. And of course I used like the Facebook login. I didn't have time to write some big security system. I was like Facebook login, Facebook comments, I made it really simple. So I could tell who was downloading the data. And it happened also with the MTV project. They were downloading all my data too. Several of the people that left to go do their project and to launch back in 2012 just completely data dumped like my whole site. And so that's actually how I knew that they were doing what they were doing, both. Right. And so I approached both of them actually at the time. I was like, you guys are kind of like taking my data. That's not cool. And the Mountain Project guys just blocked all my comments and just wouldn't pay attention to me. The founder of Pinkbike, Radek, immediately called me up and he was like, dude, so we didn't see anything on your site. We're just trying to collect data. We'll totally remove it all. But how much will you sell it for us? like sell it to us
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
They were super cool about it. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, I can get behind that. If you want to send me some money, great. At that time I was so burned out. I was doing this job and my other working full time, to pay the bills and then doing the website and spending all this money to try and promote it. And I was just like anything just to, get some of my bikes back and backfill some of the payments.
Yeah.
So it was totally cool, but they were super cool about it. And so then I
Right.
kind of just signed on to just doing some work to show, migrate the data, show them how I did some of those other cool things that they couldn't do, some of the things that our, competitors couldn't do. And then I just kept doing it. They were like, well, you're doing some cool stuff here, some cool programming. Let's just keep you doing it. And so they threw me a little money, very little money, but it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, we I don't know if you've been there from the beginning, you'd see TrailForks had zero advertising. We never had a single ad on our site on TrailForks. And so, yeah.
So when you guys started, so you start building this database, and you guys are all together working on it. Was it like the goal was to always try to keep it free, or was it like, okay, we need to like get to a certain point and then we're going to monetize it, or like how did you like have that decision?
Good question. So originally the plan was for Pink Bike to finance it, and that we were going to use our Karma program to help trail associations. That was the goal.
What's the Karma program? Can you explain that?
So the Karma program is it's a program we started really early on where you can contribute money to your local trail association, and we pass it through 100%. We don't keep a penny off that. We never have. So, and then what we're going to do is use that for statistics also for the trail association. So for instance, you go out on the trail, you have your favorite trail. You're like, this is the best trail ever. I want more trails like this. I'm going to contribute money to this trail. So the trail association knows this is where the money should go, and they should build trails like this. And so we still have that system in place, right? So you can go to any trail and you can say, on behalf of this trail or this region or this trail system, I want to contribute money. I want to donate money. And it goes 100% to the local trail system. And that was the original plan, was to just try and support trail systems. And as it started to get very expensive, servers, blades, in order to serve up the tiles, we had to just install thousands of dollars of NVMe drives. We were doing all in-house. And we were trying to figure out other ways, like, well, maybe bike shops can help us, and it was just like, no, bike stop, they don't have money, I mean,
right.
Some of the big ones do, but for the most part, they're just scraping by. We need to help them too, right? That's not going to work. And then we really were going for a long time, and we were a little bit kind of like this, disliked stepchild of Pink Bike, because Pink Bike was generating all the money, and we were just leeches. We were just, and we weren't even very expensive for relative. So, and then again, COVID hit, and suddenly we were like, there's all these things, and then there's all these things we want to do. We want to hire people on full time. We want to hire some other developers so we can concentrate on the app so it's better. And people are asking for all these features all the time. And then we were doing a bunch of stuff that people don't know about. So for instance, we have a whole search and rescue interface that's used all over for search and rescue at locations. We have all these things that people don't even know about that we've been developing. And we just wanted to make them all better. We had done so many little things that we got to make this better. And then the cost of people panning around, loading the tiles, elevation, all that stuff. We're like, we got to do something, or else, I don't know.
So for people that aren't super tech savvy, basically what you're talking about is as you're moving your map around, it's loading tiles of the map onto the screen, and that's costing you bandwidth that you're having to pay for, basically.
Right. So yeah. So
when you got 1,000 people doing it, it's not that big of a deal. And all of a sudden you got like 1 million people doing it. It's like, oh crap, that's a lot of money.
I don't know how much I can say numbers, but we're talking millions over Memorial Day weekend, just using the website, millions. Wow. And so, that kind of traffic, it takes quite a bit, even just the infrastructure in the back. And we don't use cloud. We don't use Amazon. We do use a CDN to distribute it, but we have all of our own servers, all of our own server cage. And we would just go down in there and
Yeah. So that's interesting though. So I mean, a lot of people, most people that aren't in tech just assume that, you know, you the internet's just inside of there. You know what I mean? Like they don't really look at the infrastructure that runs all of things, let alone the people. You know what I mean? And the cost of that stuff is not even something that's like on their radar. They're like, oh yeah, I can buy this hard drive or thumb drive, you know, for $100, and it has a terabyte, and I've only used 50 gigs my entire life. So they think that like storage is cheap, you know, but they don't realize when you start getting into these like storage arrays. I'm trying to keep it simple for
you
know, like you start getting, these are hundreds of thousands of dollars for these units, and then you have to put them all across the US or the globe so that you can actually serve things faster to people geographically. So
the CDN does some of that. The CDN does some of that for us,
right?
You know, but no, you're totally right. And when we did go paywall originally, if you guys have ever used the heat map on our thing, those were rasters, and our backgrounds were rasters at the time, and so it's quite a bit of bandwidth. We've optimized a lot of that now using like vector data and stuff, but we still do the heat maps and some data in rasters, and they take space, and then you have to it's like just sending out tons of images, and the back end to generate the heat maps. Now this is another issue we had, is when people were like, we added privacy zones to people's homes so that their house wouldn't show up on the heat map, but to update the heat maps often and serve them often is super high CPU bandwidth intensive. And so and a complaint we'll get is, hey, I updated my privacy zone. Why am I still on the heat map? It's like, well, it hasn't updated yet. Like, it's got to roll through. And we had to go into the code and actually go back in time and go, okay, what are all the rides that this person has submitted over the years? And we needed to block their house out of every single one of those vectors. You know what I mean? All that kind of thing, so that we could block out all that privacy data. And that's just the personal data. If you ride an illegal trail, we block it off. If there's a blackout zone that a trail association or maybe a private community has decided we do not want our trails on your map, that whole area gets blocked out of the heat map. So
how did that come about? Like, was it pretty fast out of the gate that you started having these associations contacting you and saying, hey, these are like illegal trails, or did somebody actually try to like bring you guys to a suit, or?
No, once in a while we've had some people go pretty crazy. Like you can imagine the flame, where it's like there's a trail going through my backyard. It's on your map. I have called my lawyer. You know, like people say that kind of. But for the most part, they're kind of empty threats, and we always just go take it off. I mean, that's another thing people also don't realize as far as maintaining the data is what you don't see. You can go to our stats page and it'd be like, how many trails have been removed from TrailForks? It's like 40,000. And you think about how much work that was. Okay, somebody requested it to be removed. Okay, that comes with the content curator. He says, okay, is this a legit request? Who's asking for it? Does he own the land? Is he a property manager? I got to go look up the city. There's all this work involved. And it's like, okay, it's legitimately an illegal trail. And we never remove it. I wouldn't say never. We do remove stuff if trails are going on top of each other and one's just been like blacked out, which we can detect this also, but maybe more on that later. But so what happens is we just hide the trails. Once a trail is hidden, now all of our algorithms know that anytime somebody submits a trail, if it matches that trail, we say, nope, you can't add this. It's already been added and it's been marked as illegal. Right. So we keep people from adding the data back. And this is where a lot of these other apps, which all base their data on OpenStreetMap, suffer from where they have all this data that's just illegal or wrong, or I don't know, maybe some people like that, but the trail associations don't like it. You know, they don't want, and the landowners don't like it. And it also causes problems with access when the people just are like, well, I didn't mind when a few people rolled through here, but now I'm just going to shut it down, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now all of a sudden there's people driving from all over the place to do it. You know, it's funny. It's like on one hand, you're trying to help people get out there, but on the other hand, you're not trying to like mess up people's riding either, you know?
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff on there that's not necessarily illegal that we removed or hide. We just hide it. We actually call it sensitive. This is sensitive, right? And then we have trails on there, which we call legal-ish. So that's our verbiage, right?
Legal-ish.
And legal-ish. And it depends on the areas. There's a lot of legal-ish trails on TrailForks, which depending upon the area, it's permissive, right? They allow it. As long as it doesn't get too crazy or you don't promote it too much. Like where I live right next to the U.S. Forest Service border behind my house here. It's like a few blocks up. And there's some great trails there. And I just can't talk about them a lot. They're okay with them being on TrailForks. But if I post it on Instagram or share a recording, you got to go check this out. Go, then they start to be like, the numbers hitting them are okay right now, right? And so they're okay with the legal-ish trails.
I feel like, illegal trails sometimes get a bad rap because it's like, okay, sometimes they're not the right thing at the right place. But on the other hand, there's a lot of trail systems that were initially illegal that are now, staples, like Sedona, for example.
Right.
Or like, I'm pretty sure the system in Bend was all like, kind of like, they were all poaching trails. And eventually it was like, hey, we can make this like part of our community and like embrace it. And it's a good thing. So I think, I try not to like totally bag poach trails, but on the other hand, like I try not to totally like support them either. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you got to be somewhere in between for right now.
Yeah, so, some of those illegal trails have become some of the greatest trails ever.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and then there's some areas that'll like never be legal probably, but like everybody in the planet knows about them. Like everybody knows the UC Santa Cruz trails. Like they're in all the magazines. They're like, there's hundreds of cars parked out there every weekend, but you can still randomly get a ticket for being on them, so.
That whole hillside there down is completely, there's just tons of great stuff in there. And we block that off of all of our heat map, all of our ride line. We block because they're all on our map. You just can't see them.
Yeah.
So the whole area is blocked. I can see them. Like I know there's like 4 people on the planet who actually have the full admin access. They can see all the illegal trails.
See all the trails everywhere. Oh, that's pretty rad. Does the heat map work on those too? You can actually see like areas that are lit up.
I can see them on an unfiltered heat map.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like you guys can see like, man, there's a hot zone in this area that nobody like
knows. Yeah.
Knows
what is
about.
that? Yeah. And some of the really good hand-built illegal trails, the people that use them, they know not to record. Like don't record anything on anything. Just go ride it and don't record. So not all of it's on there, but there's quite a bit that people record anyway. And
I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes you'll see these guys that'll be like, don't use Strava, that's what's ruining the trails. But then it's like the exit of your trail drops into a major hiking trail. Like everybody in the planet that walks by it can see that your trail's there. It's not like I've been to other ones where there's signs posted where it's 50 yards before you get off the trail, there's a sign that says pick up your bike and carry it out. Like those are the ones that are like still trying to be hidden, but anyway.
Hike only, or hike only. I mean, we added other activities, and one of the main impetus for that was we have so many cities and municipalities that host our map on their website. Like they're actually the source of truth for certain places because it's just easy to maintain, and they can use our heat maps to realign and find trails and make sure that everything's aligned up perfectly. And so they're like, well, we have to have hikes on there. We have to have equestrian just so we can show other users what else they can do. So we added that a few years back. But we're still.
Is there some kind of fee that those like entities, like if I wanted to use your TrailForks on my website for something, would there be like a fee that I would pay? Or
No, not at all. No, of course. Yeah, no, you can embed it. We just have any region on the website. You can go to any region. We actually have embeddable, like it is like so many different things. You can embed a route, you can embed a trail, you can embed a region, you can embed a list of all the trails that you built if you're a builder. I mean, there's like so many lists. So sometimes trail builders will go in there and they'll assign themselves to the trails that they built or they maintain, and then they'll use a little widget on their website so you can see all the trails that they built, just in a massive list. Some trail associations will use our condition reporting system, and they'll just keep the reports updated. They'll update the trails and make sure they're all updated with their conditions, muddy, dry, whatever. And then they'll use the weather embed, like the condition embed. And it's always free. At the website, everything on the website's free. And it always has been. We've been acquired by outside. I can't say if it always will be, but we're 99% sure it will be.
Yeah, today it is. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't predict the future. I mean, you can have your goals, but I can understand that, and there will always be somebody out there that disagrees, but whatever. It is what it is, right? So, shoot, now I forgot. So you guys were pretty established, I think, for that boom of COVID, because at that point, I think most people that were riding, if they were using some kind of app while riding or to help with riding, it was probably one of three things, like Garmin's Connect, it was Strava, or it was TrailForks. And Garmin and Strava didn't really do what you guys did, which was give you the ability to, hey, see where the trails are and like actually be at an intersection and know, oh, I want to go left here. I could just go up a little bit and see it, So I think, obviously that played into why you probably started getting all these, like this huge surge when all these new riders came in.
Yeah.
So how did you guys decide like what the paywall was going to be? Was it like, hey, this is how much our bills are, let's try to reverse engineer this fee, or like this seems reasonable, or
it was a total guess, because at the time it was just like we had no idea how many people would buy, how many people would, we didn't even, we still today, we do not require registration in any way. Anybody can use the website and the app right now without even registering. You don't have to. So we didn't even have a good count. And I wouldn't even say we still do necessarily on how many subscribers we have. We can look at how many people are hitting the website and using the app, but we didn't know. So again, it's really, really difficult to tell. So we just kind of put a number that was just like what kind of makes sense for like what's pretty cheap. What sounds good, And we did the intro offer. It's like, a few bucks a month. What is that nowadays? That's like, it's like a cup of coffee. I mean, for the whole month. I mean, it's not that much. We could, that should be good. That should probably get us so we can maybe hire some people, a couple of our volunteers on full time, and maybe hire even another developer. That was kind of the goal, and so
Right on. So then you guys decided at that point, okay, we're gonna set this fee because you didn't want to go ad based.
Yeah, the ad okay, this is the people ask us that. Oh, can't you just add ads? And with regards to TrailForks, for us, it's always been about the experience. As far as what we've always wanted to do is just get people so they can just quickly find out where they want to ride and then have the best experience out on the trail, right? So the idea behind that is trying to have the most accurate data, so they're not like traipsing through some old unused trail, right? So we added heat maps so people could see where people are riding. We added a popularity map, so you can actually look at the map and see, relative to this trail system, what are the most popular trails to ride, and you can do that. What direction are people riding? You can see that. The whole goal has always been like, just get people to so they have a good experience. How many times have I done, like before TrailForks, have I gone out to a trail system that I didn't know and then ended up hiking up the trail, basically hiking, where all the locals were going downhill? Like I hate that, or getting to just not knowing the best loops, not knowing the most popular stuff. I mean, I remember going to Bend early on and riding, and I rode some trail system out in the middle of nowhere. I had no, it was on a map. I had no idea that it was totally unused, unpopular, not well known, and so that was kind of our goal always, is just, and so advertising is like slow load, makes things crash. and then you don't have control often of who's advertising what. We didn't want people to get advertisements that we thought just made a bad experience or gave a bad message or whatever. I mean, I think about the times my browser will like stall and crash because the advertisement, not the site, right?
Yeah,
and that we just like, we did not like that experience. Pink Bike had done quite a bit of that kind of advertising and done some experimenting with it, and the experience we just thought was just not good. And so yeah, that was kind of the idea anyway at the time. And we don't have any plans to put advertising on. Well, I'm the product manager, so say no. I don't. I hate advertisements. Maybe that's just me.
I think that in an app like TrailForks, I think it would be really like it would be hard, because of a lot of that time you're using it, you're not necessarily always in good cell signal area, so you'd have to like preload them. It's just like a lot of logistics, and I can understand what you're saying about what type of ads you want and stuff like that. Like, to me, it makes sense.
Well, and screen space with a map is absolutely premium on the trail.
Right.
We try, we don't want anything blocked if we can. And we are already looking at, we have so many useful, what we call live layers that people can look at to see. And it's layers of information that's being fed through people riding and people submitting reports. And we need to have a way to quickly toggle those on and off. Like we have the ride lines layer. It's activity recordings where you can look at a trail system and see where people are hiking, where people are biking, where people are motoing. So you can go, well, I'm going to hike today and avoid all the bikers, or I'm going to ride because I can totally see where everyone's riding, or I don't want to be where the motos are. They're going to be, I don't know, mow me over. So those kinds of things, it takes so much screen space. We already haven't even put buttons to like toggle those. We have to like go into menu systems because we want to keep the map maxed out. So advertisement, I can't even. Yeah.
So what made you decide to still offer the app for free for like a geographical area?
I don't know. That came about, I guess. Okay, so it kind of depends on who you ask, I guess. So certain people in our group at TrailForks don't like this idea where when you say, hey, you want to try our app? Okay, first you got to create a login, then you got to log in, you got to do all these things. Like we didn't like that aspect. And then the other thing was we didn't like it when these apps would be like, hey, buy our app, but you can't see all the features. We got these pro features, and you're not going to see how good they are until you buy it. Right. Yeah. And so we didn't want that. We wanted people to see the full experience and really realize all the work we put into providing these types of layers and features and styles so that you can really see what you could do with it. And then make that decision, at least have that chance to see those, and then the other thing is that we don't want like kids, people who just want to ride their local trail system. We don't want them to have to pay. Like the idea was, this is for people who are pretty hardcore that want to travel, that go outside their area and are willing to spend the gas and the money and the time to go find those awesome trails that are just outside their area. And if they're doing that, then they maybe should support us a little bit.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, that's basically what happened to me.
What was that?
I mean, essentially, that's why I paid, was because I didn't really use TrailForks locally. I know all my trails, or most of them. Let's just say it that way, And so and I would always use your app when I would be somewhere else. It'd be like, oh, I'm in Bend, or I'm in, wherever, Washington, and trying to go on some ride that I've, just heard about from some guy on some website or something, and that to me was whenever it was like that. And the other thing was, there was a sort of semi-local area that I was trying to learn how to navigate my way through. And this is actually before you guys had the paywall. And I like got like a Strava route from somebody. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll just go follow that. And then I got out there and I had no cell signal. And then I realized my Strava route was worthless. So it was like, fortunately I had a paper map that I could kind of like make my way through the day at least. But that was the thing that got me to first load TrailForks, And then once I started using it, then it was definitely whenever I was like away from home. So when you guys had the thing set to like, what's your local area? Like the first thing I did was like, what local area am I going to ride the most
Right.
away from home? And I set that as home.
People do that all the time.
Yeah. And then I was good for a little while. And then I was somewhere else. And I was like, okay, dude, guess what? Now you have to help them pay. You have to help them out.
Yeah. I ran into a guy at a bike shop who's like, we were talking about this. He's like, oh yeah, I use TrailForks, but I only use it down in St. George because that's the only place I got my area open. You know, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. But I mean, you guys have put, like you were saying earlier, I mean, you guys have put a lot of time into developing a lot of feature sets to the site. Like as a YouTuber, one of the things that I thought was really cool that you guys did was you are scanning the show more in YouTube. And if you see a TrailForks link in there, you link that YouTube video to your TrailForks page. So then when somebody's there, like, let's just say they're looking at the Downeyville Trail, downhill, run, they could be right there and then see the recent YouTube videos that are pertinent to that trail as well, which I think is like, it's really forward thinking to like, back in the day, let's just say, whenever you would want, like have people on your site, you wanted to keep them there forever. Like you didn't want them to ever leave. And you're giving people options to leave, but you're actually like giving them options to leave, but for things that they would be leaving for anyway. And I think that, that adds to the experience. Being able to look down there and see pictures. Where do you guys get the pictures from? Do people post them or?
Yeah.
Or is it similar to the YouTube?
To your first comment, we don't make money from you being on screen time. We want you just to get out and we want to get out there and ride. So we get the photos. You can submit them. We get them a few different ways actually. So you can submit them when you're riding in the app, or you can after you're done you can submit them. And, if it's like if you say, oh, this is a good picture of the trail. We really like photos that are indicative of that trail. So that you can kind of see. Yeah, so people can see what that was like. But we also, when people associate, they associate reports. So, for instance, a tree's down, or like this is muddy. Those also good, but those get linked down to the bottom. Like the reports are kind of bottom, because generally they're not like real good photos. So, and we're actually working on better ways to rank them now too. We do have a fairly complex way of ranking them based upon how popular the photo, how many people view the photo, if they like the photo, those kinds of things. We have a way to rank those and put the best photos at the top. But there's lots of ways to put them in there. We actually, in our ride logs, we'll pull photos from Strava too, just to post, but we can't take them and put them in our database. We just display them. We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but that makes sense. I mean, either way, I think it's cool to be able to see that data or to see that, like those images of the trail as well, because you can look at an elevation map and not really know, like,
for sure.
Mean?
Yeah.
How do you come up with your ratings of how difficult a trail is? Because I could say something is like intermediate, but my intermediate might be like black diamond to somebody else.
No, for sure. That is a continual battle, and for the most part, we leave it up to the regional administrator, because oftentimes the difficulty is kind of relative to the area, right? And you'll get and that has pluses and minuses. We'll get
like a blue Squamish trail means you're rolling down like a 40-foot rock wall.
We get that a lot. Yeah, Squamish, legit black. Yeah, that we hear that all the time. Well, these are legit blacks, right? Yeah. Now, honestly, the mountain biking and mountain biking trails have progressed a lot, and especially in the U.S. Like just where I am in Utah, everything was kind of blue and green for a long time, bidirectional. A funny thing was when they first imported my data back in 2014. I'm like, okay, you got to import this data. It's like 100,000 trails or something. They're like, oh, okay, we're going to default everything downhill, and then we'll just go back and change all the uphill stuff, because I didn't have it marked. And I was like, wait, you're going to do what? No. Default everything to bidirectional. And they're like, why would we do that? And I was like, in the United States, we have bidirectional trails. And this is back in 2014. And where I live, I mean, I could count the number of downhill and uphill
they're all
trails in one
Canadian.
hand.
So they're like, everything's downhill here.
Yeah, everything's downhill with the way you get up. Yeah, but here it's changed. You know, now you're getting a lot more legit blacks and people progressing, the bike's progressing. So there's a lot more of that. And I don't know if it's always on par. You do get that, well, it's Squamish legit. And then here, there's certain places where they're like, this is black. Like, and you'll get, and this is the thing about doing things relative. We have to leave it up to the trail associations often because they're like, no, this is a black and we're going to mark it as a black. And then you get some people who just ride bike park, who just downhill all day. And they're like, this is not a black, you know, it's like, okay, you just got to know that it's relative. I mean, and then you've got people who want to promote their trail systems. So they're maybe in an area that doesn't have maybe real high mountains or real steep mountains. And so they really want to promote their trail system and the variant. So they'll be like, this trail is called Terminator. And you look at it and it's like a gravel road. And you're like, right, okay, great. Yeah. But what do you do? To some locations, that's a trail. You know, it's an ATV trail. It's you're riding on dirt. It's a trail, you know, and so that's not everywhere, but some places. So you kind of.
But it's really, it's such a hard thing to know. Like, even if not everybody travels all over the place riding trails. So they're black where they're at. Let's just say they're, you know, is what they know as a black, you know, and
right.
I recently had a similar conversation with a friend. We were all going to Sedona and we were trying to explain to somebody else that was coming from the Midwest, like, your bike needs more travel than what you're bringing, you know, and and they were like, what are you talking about? You know, like,
what's travel?
Yeah. And, you know, some of their trails, what they did in, you know, a 15-mile or a 20-mile ride would be like the first 30 minutes of our ride in elevation. You know, it'd be like, it's just crazy, you know? So it's hard for people to really know, you know, the difference. And then the other end of it is like what you said earlier is just like experience. I know that there's some trails that I thought were legitimate mountain bike trails. I don't know what color I would have gave them back then, but I thought they were legitimate trails when I was newer to riding. And now I'm like, yeah, that's an XC trail. It's pretty much flat.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah, we've all had that experience where you're like, I don't know about all of us, but you know, a lot of people have that experience where you're like, I used to walk that, like that feature. I used to walk. Like, why would I ever walk that? You know, and then part of it is the bike progression. I mean, I think back some of the early years when I first was designing the site, like I had I can't remember the travel. It was like a really low, like 90 in the back. Like, you wouldn't even think of that. It's like a cross country. There's a scalpel, Cannondale scalpel, like a left.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't even a real spring. It was like a flexing. And so it's so steep on the front. Now I ride a Rocky Mountain altitude and I got 170 in the front. You know, it's so slack. And I don't even run it slack. I mean, it's got the Ride 9. So I just put it like in the middle. If I slack it out, I feel like I'm riding a chopper. Like, it's so much. I don't.
Right.
I can do any of the trails in here in Utah. I mean, I can do Portal and Moab, which is just crazy. There's a segment on there called Rocks of Doom, and it's fun to go down because you get to pass all the people that are walking it. And it's like almost everybody's walking it. But
I would love to ride that trail, but I'm afraid of heights, and the beginning part of that is like, everything I've seen on video, it looks terrifying.
Oh, you haven't ridden it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, no, it's the fisheye. It's not that bad. There's only a couple spots where there's one spot where you kind of like come down this rocky section and then you have to take a hard right and there's no shoulder and the trail falls away and it's just a sheer cliff. And that's the only place that I kind of pucker up a little bit. After that, the bottom half is just massive car-sized boulders. And
the bottom half, every video I've seen, I'm like, man, I would love to do that, but I don't know if I could get there. You know,
that's my favorite trail in Utah.
Sometimes though, like you said, the videos don't represent things well. Like, I was worried about doing like Hangover or Highline in Sedona
Mm.
before I had went. And when I went there, it didn't bother me at all. Like not even a little bit.
There's a couple sections on Highline. I mean, the chute's fine, but there's a section after that where you've got those like steps and that turn that are.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure I might have walked that.
Yeah. I know exactly which spot you're talking about. It's like right after the chute. And I think for me, I get nervous if it's a cliff, but if I feel like I'm just gonna fall and like bang myself up, then I'm all right. Like if you're riding Brewers in Sedona right at the beginning, like that's a cliff. Like if you go off, I mean it's a wide trail, but like if you go off, you're falling for a while. So
yeah. But, I don't know. Sometimes those step ones where the rocks look really jagged, I just imagine my femur breaking. And my quad just splitting wide open and just hammering. So, but I don't know. I still pretty much send it, but there's that one and that Highline on that. I walked that. Something about that with the turn and the drops, and it just was super wheel trappy.
It just depends on the day. I've walked it and I've ridden it, and I don't feel like when I've ridden it that I was like, oh, I got this. It was like dodge the bullet.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, true.
So, where do you guys get your ideas for what you're developing on? Is it all user based still, or is it internal? Like, hey, I think this would be good.
Oh, like how do we get ideas? Well, the good thing is all of us are avid mountain bikers, right? So Trevor lives up in Squamish. I live in Utah, and we've all been biking. So from the beginning, it's always been, what do we want this to do for us, right? What do I want to do? Like, so for instance, when the new Garmin's came out that had the jump stats, the jumps, like the jump metrics.
Yeah, totally.
I was like, I want to try this, So they sent me a Garmin, and the first thing I thought was, oh man, I'm making a heat map of this. I want to see every jump all over the world, right? And so that's what I wanted. I wanted to see that, and so I crafted the feature according to what I wanted to see. Now I knew there'd be trails with jumps, but I didn't want to see a heat maps are basically a clustering of how frequent something is, right? But I didn't care if there's a trail with a bunch of little jumps. I wanted to know where the big jumps were. So I made the heat map specifically a magnitude heat map, right? It got hot only as the jumps got bigger. That's what I wanted, right? I want to know where those were. And so I went and I just data mined all the fit files. These are the files that Garmin submit, and it had all the jump data in it. So I just did a little proximity algorithm that would determine, well, if everybody's jumping at this exact same spot within 3 meters, that's probably a jump. Let's figure out how high they're going. The Garmin tells us how high they're going, how far they're going, their hang time. So let's average that out, and then let's put that in there in the heat map so we could see it. And then Trevor on the website said, well, let's do a Strava jump kind of thing, right? Let's let people compare their jumps. And so, because that's what he wanted to see. He wanted to see how big he was jumping against the locals. Was he jumping big? Was he going, were there people that were going bigger or faster or sending it more? And so as a lot of it's this kind of team thing. We just do what we want. Now, there is on the other end of this, we get tons of emails, people asking for stuff, and we continually get that data feed from the fourth guy in the group, the content manager. His name's Mark Holloway. So he feeds me the inputs, and he has a really good sense of, he looks at all the input, all the email. We look at all the social media, what people are asking, what people are posting about. We'll even check conversations. So people are like looking at stuff on social media and having conversations. Why do you use this app? Why do I use that app? And then we look for the keywords, and then we just read the discussion, right? I'm sure people do this. They may or may not know that I'm a member of a bunch of different mountain bike groups on like Facebook and then things. And so I look to see what people are saying saying why they use one app versus another. And we put that into what we want our app to do. And that's how we kind of prioritize and and do that list.
If you need a guy on your payroll that just reads mountain bike websites and stuff like that, I think I know, dude.
Yeah, we might be able to use you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, before you had all these groups and stuff like that, I mean, one of the only places to go was MTBR and the forums, you know, and then later kind of Reddit and Facebook groups and stuff like that came about. But it's interesting how the technology changes and some of those things are not as pertinent as they were before. I mean, I definitely was like a hard mountain bike forum kind of guy, and now I only swing by there every once in a while when I'm looking for something specific. Otherwise, it's the local Facebook groups really cover that well. Do you guys try? I mean, I guess Reddit has that, or not. I'm sorry, not Reddit, but oh, now I'm drawing a blank right now. Pink Bike has that as well, though. They have their forums and they're pretty. Do you guys do the Pink Bike conversations like mesh with TrailForks at all, or is there any? I don't go to the website very often, so I don't know what's on there versus the app.
Oh,
like, is there any kind of like geographical, like, hey, these are conversations about these trail systems or something like that on the website?
On our website?
Yeah.
The app is kind of a view into the website. It has most everything there. The website has some little features here and there, but we don't, as far as social, we really it's mostly just comments on reports, comments on trails, comments on routes, and and people submit photos, and you can actually, we still kind of link to Pink Bike in certain ways. So if you post photos, you can comment on photos and rate photos. We don't have so much of those social aspects. For the most, we really want to have everything in the app, and so we've been pushing more and more features. Some things are some features are a little more difficult than others. Like we have a feature where we record when someone records their ride, we can actually paint the whole trail system based upon when the trail was last ridden. So when you can see when it's rainy out or whatever, you can kind of see who was this trail ridden recently, stuff like that. We do that live. What we call these live styles, where they're kind of like, because you want to know if somebody just rode it, right? It's just dry enough, it just got ridden. We want that to be up to date. That takes a lot of bandwidth and processing, and so we're figuring out a way to sync that up to the app. So that'll be in the app soon.
How did the relationship with Garmin that you talked about earlier come about? Like, you're providing, because I mean that was a big change,
Yeah. So, Garmin. I'm a little bit of a Garmin fanboy from early on. Like I said, when I first started my site, it was originally to make a Garmin map. I've liked having the trail map on my bars. I probably comes. I was a roadie for a while before this. At times, I just love looking at data while I'm riding. So I guess they just wanted to move. They wanted to get Garmin wanted to get more into mountain biking. They wanted to introduce their metrics, all that kind of stuff. And so it was a kind of a dual thing for both of us. Like, oh, you guys want to introduce mountain biking and we'll publish that kind of stuff on our site. Will kind of goes both ways. Like we both get a benefit out of it.
So then they give you access to like their data from what their users are uploading, or?
Well, we do that anyway. Like we were doing that before. So this is how the recording works. So you can hook up your account with Garmin, or you can hook up your account with Strava, or you can go the other way around, right? You can go from Strava and connect to TrailForks, right? So that you can record in the app and then it'll send it to Garmin and Strava, or you can record in Strava and it'll send it, or record in Garmin. The best for us is if you have a Garmin.
But you can. I don't use the integration with Strava and TrailForks.
Oh,
so Strava has an option where it publishes what you do to TrailForks for you.
Yeah. So if you record in Strava, the ride will just get sent to TrailForks.
Is there some kind of like profile or something that you have on TrailForks that you can look at, or is it just to like help out the TrailForks community?
So there's a couple things. So one, if you record in Strava or you record on TrailForks, either way, you have a feed where it will show you what you rode on top of all the different colors, all the different trails colored by their difficulty. So you can actually, instead of having this kind of like ride recording out in outer space, you actually see all the trails you rode. And then we detect the trails that you rode and we'll list them all.
Yeah, I didn't even know you could record in TrailForks.
Yeah. So you can go either way. So for instance, I actually record in my Garmin, and the reason that is because I want all the jump metrics to go to TrailForks.
I use my Garmin, and then I push that to Strava so I can like make fun of my friends, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. So you can hook up the Garmin. You can hook up, and you can go to TrailForks on the website. You go to your settings and connections, and you can connect to your Garmin Connect account. And then when you record on Garmin, it'll go to both. And then if there's jump metrics, like if it's at 5:30, 8:30, or 10:30. That will go to TrailForks, and then you can compare other people who did that jump, and you can see who went the highest, who had the best hang time, all those kinds of things. And then you can also see where you rode, which trails you rode. And then what's cool about this is you can do other cool things later on. Like you can look at the map based upon all the trails that you've ridden before. So you can actually say, okay, which trails have I never ridden? And most of the usage of the data is actually anonymous. We don't care who wrote it or who you are. We just take that data so that we can say where most people are riding. And we can say, like, this is where most people are starting their ride. Then we allow trail associations to see that so they know where they might want to add a trailhead or where they might have a lot of traffic or stuff like that. And so we also use that for our heat map and for our ride line data so that we can show you where people are riding or where people are hiking as opposed to riding, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the people in the comments was saying that they were super impressed that they've been in the mountains, and TrailForks still linked with GPS. Was the GPS ability with TrailForks all the way from the beginning?
Or the ability to record?
No, the ability to like see where you are on the map. Was that something that was added later?
When we did the first version of the app had full offline usability. The very first version had the map with all the trails offline. You don't need any kind of thing. We only recently added the ability to load the base maps. But up until that point, we had been adding, when we would go in and curate a trail system, we would often add the access roads. We have two different types of access roads you can add, so that even if you got out of cell service, you could at least get to the point where you could start getting to the road to get to the trail system, even if you couldn't actually see the rest of the data in the background, like the road.
Yeah.
Now you can actually pre-download whole areas and select the layers that you want to use for when you're offline. But we've always had full offline trails on the map. It was never loaded.
Is there something you need to do in addition to get that data? Because I know whenever I let's just say I ride in California, it says download California. When I do that, does that download everything, or is there something I need to go in and select to say, give me a little bit more?
So there's two things. So the first one is if you download California, you get all the trail data. And I have to go back to see, we're slowly tweaking it, but you can add all the trail data, the name, the difficulty, all those kinds of things that basically allow us to paint the map and show you the trails. Now, when you click on the data, I think we also send the elevation data. So you can see the profile. You can see most of the stuff you need offline. Now, if you were to go to the details and say, I want to see the photos or the videos, we don't sync that.
Yeah, right.
No way we will ever
do those access roads and stuff that you were talking about, that would be their
if they're added. Yeah, if they've been added, and then we often do that, or when we review the trail system, because a lot of times when people add the trails, the contributors they'll add a half-baked, like a few trails or part of it, or maybe, and then they won't add all the supporting pieces, the parking lots, the viewpoints, and all that kind of stuff, access roads, emergency access, all that kind of stuff. So we have to go in, connect that, clean it, get it all sorted out. So once that's there, then you generally can get to the trail system without having any cell service. Now, we do now have an option where you can go download a whole area and say, I want these layers. I want to see the heat map, and I want to see this base map, and I want to pre-down just for this area because I know it's backcountry and there's going to be no cell service, and I want to make sure those are available. So you can do that now too.
Mm-hmm. And then I think you guys can build a route on TrailForks now too, and just send it straight to your Garmin.
Yeah. So you can't do it in the app. You can't build the route in the app, but on the website. So this is actually pretty cool. On the website, we've got an interface, a thing called Route Finder. Now, Route Finder is really cool because a lot of people don't know this. You can go to Route Finder and it'll show you a bunch of the routes that people built it'll show you detected routes. So what we'll do is we'll automatically scan all the rides in the area and create 3 or 4 average different rides based upon people's locals common loops. And then we'll show all the rides in the area. You can put any of those on your wish list. And when you put any of those on your wish list, it'll pop up in your Garmin through the Connect IQ. It'll go on your phone. So you can always have those. What I actually like to do is I like to see what people are riding. Like I'll actually go, oh, what did he ride? Well, that looks like a cool loop. Send that to my phone. So a lot of times when you look at my Garmin, what pops up on my Garmin, it's not a name of any route. It's somebody else's ride. It's like this dude's route on this date, and that's the one I want to go look at. And so, yeah, that just syncs up. And it syncs on the watch too. So it'll go to your if you have a Phoenix, it'll go to your watch too.
Yeah, I have the Phoenix. I don't like it when I'm riding though. I don't know.
You don't wear it? You don't wear it when you ride?
Not when I'm riding. I tried it for a little while. Originally it was the Phoenix 3 and I didn't like, because sometimes my wrist would bump it on and off. And then I just didn't like, especially on road, I didn't like having to move my arm to see like how fast I'm going. And
right.
Because that's usually like how I would keep my pace or something like that. It's like, oh, I want to stay above like 16 or whatever it was, And it just seemed like it's such a small thing, but to me it was like for $100 for like I like the Edge 130. It's really small.
Oh, and
yeah. Then nice. All I need to do is look down. I see what I see the data I want. And I can look back up, and then I can for me, Garmin was never really about too much of like seeing data while I'm on the trail.
Yeah.
It was more, I like the analytics afterwards. So it'd be like, right. Oh, wow. Like, look at my heart rate when I was climbing, or, look how fast I was going. And maybe on the trail, the only thing I really care about is how far I've been, how long I've been riding, and like how much elevation I've climbed. You know what I mean? Where it's like, right. Somebody's telling me we're going to do another 1,000 feet. And I'm looking down. I'm like, dude, we're at 3,000 right now. I don't know if I'm feeling it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I usually I have an 830, which I use because I like the jump metrics. I think the 130 has those.
The 130 metrics. Plus has it now. The original 130 didn't.
That's right. Yeah, if you have the 130, but then you can connect it up. I do both, but I take the 830 when I'm riding in places like Park City ski resorts, because with the heads up display, there's so many times when I'm on like like those service roads at ski resorts where you don't know where the trail starts and stops. You don't know when you're going to get to it. And then you're like, oh, did I pass it? Was this it? And then you're constantly pulling your phone out. Those areas where it's just massive mesh of trails. I run the 830. But for local stuff, I wear my watch because I don't have to, I can see my heart rate. And that's the only thing I show on it. I always just go scroll right to the heart rate, and then I can just go, okay, it's and then I can know how hard I'm working. And that's about it.
I don't know. I mean, the new one I have, the heart rate seems like it's a lot better. When I first got the other one, it didn't seem like it was as accurate as my chest strap. So I still wear the chest strap just because I'm like, I really want to know. Because sometimes it would be like, I could feel my heart beating out of my chest, and it'd be like, you're at a 65 right now. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
That's right.
Or it would be the other way around. It'd be like, yeah, you're at 130. I'm like, dude, I am not anywhere. Like I can tell.
That's
I'm
funny.
Chill right now.
I used to have one of those heart rate straps, and I remember sometimes my jersey would flap and it would make the heart rate higher than it was. It's like,
oh, interesting.
Going 280. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I guess I don't go fast enough for that.
Yeah, that's downhill.
Yeah, right. No, I'm totally joking around. So, so how many people are at TrailForks now? So, I mean, originally it was 4. What are you guys looking at now?
Now, let's see. Well, we got acquired by Outside, so we actually have like some marketing people now, but they're not really TrailForks. They're you know what I mean? So now we have some of these jobs that we don't do. We don't, it was always a funny kind of anecdote within the Pink Bike TrailForks group. And people would say like, so what does this person do at TrailForks? And it was always like, well, they're a developer. That was everybody.
Everybody's a developer.
Was the answer. Developer. Everyone's a developer. So now there's some other people doing other things, but as far as what we would call our group, there's 7 of us now, which is still not that many,
No, not at all.
we're still pretty kind of bare bones as far as groups. It's not a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I say this a lot on this show, but I think most people don't realize how small the businesses are that they assume are like. I would imagine if we went out and like polled 20, 50, 100 mountain bikers at the trailhead, how many people you think work at TrailForks? They would be throwing out big numbers like, 50, 100.
Right.
No, I don't think very many people would answer with 7.
Right. Okay. So now, if I was to count now that we're with outside, if I was to maybe say this marketing person is split between this, and we also now being part of outside, we're also own Gaia GPS, like our company. So there's also Gaia GPS as well. So that's kind of a little more of a backcountry kind of hiking kind of app. So some of those resources, the marketing and whatever, I'm trying to think like marketing, social, that kind of stuff. So a few people shared. So I'd say if we were all off on our own, getting the same amount of support, I would say maybe 10, 11.
Yeah.
Best.
That's funny you mentioned Gaia. What was the number, first of all? I barely heard you.
10, maybe 10 people. I would say
maybe
an extra bump 3. That up from 7 to 10. I don't want to be like, we only got this many, because there's a few people that do supporting roles on the side here and there. Yeah.
So, but I mean, still, I bet you nobody would say 10. I guarantee it. I would almost love to do it just to find out. But maybe next time you guys are at Sedona, we could just ask 20 people as they walk up and see what.
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Well, when you came by and we talked in person, it was funny because I'd tell people like, "Oh yeah, we got 2 people here. We got half our team. We're here."
Right? Yeah. 50% of the staff is at the event. Here. Yeah. That's funny. So you mentioned Gaia. Do you think that there will be some kind of like integration maybe that you guys will probably work on or do in the future? Because the reason I ask is I do use Gaia for mountain biking, because I can get a GPX trail from somebody and I can load it on there. And if it's not legit, let's just say, then I can go follow that.
Oh, okay. Well, you can do that. You can do that in TrailForks. Yeah, you can create a ride plan. So if you go on the website on TrailForks, when you go to create a route, there's 2 options. You say either I'm going to create a route or I'm going to create a ride plan. If you do a ride plan, it's totally private. It's your own thing. So if it's a ride plan,
can I upload a GPX and then it'll display it?
It's just like you're creating a route, but it's just for you. You can upload a GPX. You can add POIs if you want. Yeah. You can even add extra little sections. Like, here's my route. This is where the viewpoint I want to get to. And this little section of downhill I heard is crazy. So you add a little extra line in there, and that all will sync up to your app, and then you've got it on your phone.
Yeah, I definitely need to play with the website more then, because to me that would be the thing that I was at least thinking of a minute ago was, man, it would be nice to be able to see the other trails, because sometimes when I'm just following somebody's Garmin file, it's like, is that the turn that they're making? You know what I mean? Or like, oh, well, where's this trail go? I kind of would like to explore it, but I don't want to find out like 3 miles and 2,000 feet of elevation later that I shouldn't have went that way,
Yeah, for sure. It overlays it. So just like you said, you can see all the trails and that kind of thing. So
it's almost like you guys are mountain bikers making a mountain biking app, right?
Yeah. and not having any marketing people or people don't know about the features. Like, just like these things you're mentioning, most of these things, you can do that. It's just that, again, we're all developers, we're all mountain bikers, but we're horrible at letting people know all these features that we've written. We just go write them, and then we're like, cool, what can I do now? What's the next feature that I want? I don't need to tell anybody about these features.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like there's a training course for TrailForks, you know what I mean? So it's like, like you're gonna come on, you're gonna kind of basically learn the obvious stuff, and then I guess, I mean, like with almost any app, you have to take the initiative then to kind of see more from it, So
when we were in Sedona, and we would show people like the activity recordings, because they're like, a lot of times it was like a couple, like one person was mountain biking and then the significant other wanted to go on a hike, and I'm like, oh, you can see right here, look, these are hike only, you won't encounter any bikes. And they're like, how did you just get to that screen? And it's like just not knowing, not rooting around. You just got to root around, and you can see that.
So is there pretty much, is there feature parity between the website and the app? Is it like one for one or?
Yeah, not complete. So like, again, route creation, ride log creation, that kind of stuff is not. Our route creation is pretty complex because we provide event courses. And so there's so many things that we're to do for that, where you create time segments and all the different feed zones and these kinds of things. And so it's pretty feature rich for creating routes, and then for events, and then ride logs. So you can't create routes in the app at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got it. I can read between the lines there. So what about the accuracy? If people, you said that you can actually record your ride in TrailForks. What about the accuracy in that? Like, is it, pretty dialed as far as your elevation count, or is it, one guy can do one ride and the other guy can do another, and they got 300 feet of difference in elevation? Or
so that's an interesting question, because a lot of that is device dependent. If you're relying upon the devices, there's two pieces you're talking about. You're talking about recording elevation, and you're talking about recording tracks. So let's take those separately. So tracks in general, it kind of depends on the device. Certain devices are better than others. A lot of the Garmin devices are better than phones, and some of the phones are really bad. And then a lot of the phones try and do tricky things to save battery or to save cost of cell service. So they'll try and find networks like Wi-Fi networks, and then you get weird problems where signals are bouncing around, and then they'll try and shut off and things like that. We've tried to dial that in over the years, and we have a native implementation of what we think is a pretty good optimized tracking now, which we actually put out just only a few months ago. And so we think that's pretty good. As good as we can get from the phone, depending upon what phone you have, right? Mm-hmm. But we always have this, where you're bouncing around cliffs, and it's just, sometimes it's not. We're subject to physics like everybody else.
Yeah.
Now, the elevation is a very interesting question. You get this a lot, where people will comment on trails or routes or things and say, this has this much elevation, there's no way I rode that, or and it's kind of funny because, and there's two parts of that problem. One is elevation, depending upon where you are. Like, if it's a hillside, if the satellite is drifting at all, it's going back and forth up the hillside, and you have lots of little bumps. All that adds up to a lot of elevation. It doesn't feel like it, right?
Yeah.
We have ways of smoothing that effectively and trying, but again, a smooth is really, you're still kind of guessing. Or imagine somebody on a bike and it's bobbing up and down. If it's really accurate using barometric pressure as opposed to NASA data, then you're just adding that up. You're adding up every little bit. You're going up and down a foot, up and down, and it adds up. And then there's another aspect that people almost never think about, and that is as a downhill trail or a really long trail. So like you can even go look. There's like a comment on a trail in Moab where you shuttle to the top, and it takes you like all day to get downhill. It's mostly downhill, but there's quite a bit of little sections coming up, but it doesn't feel like it, because you're constantly rolling into those uphills at speed and kind of coasting, and you have long breaks. So physically, people think of typically altitude based upon how hard they worked by the end of the ride.
Right. So they get to the end of that ride and they're like, what do you mean I climbed 2,000 feet? I just descended all day.
Yeah, there's no way. Your app sucks.
Yeah.
You're like, no, you actually rode that. You just didn't realize all the breaks you took and the rolling in and how much time it was. And so, and then you got to think, where does this anecdotal idea of elevation come from for the user? Maybe what they are used to is something that was wrong, and now this is right. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, though. I mean,
yeah, but people don't think about that. They just have this idea of, this is the elevation, this is what it felt like, it couldn't be this, and so your app's wrong. And so we really work on that. Like, again, we developed our own elevation service, but there are things that other people do that we can't. So for instance, we get a lot of ride log data and a lot of altitude data, but not as much as, say, like a Strava, where they can actually look at super busy areas and they can average out and smooth out the elevation data and create a little bit better.
Right. They can be like 10,000 people rode this trail, and here's what all of their computers said.
Right.
And now we can make an average of it and probably be pretty damn accurate, you know?
Right. And another lot of people don't realize is that getting barometric pressure from your GPS is very different from the actual altitude. It's much more granular and accurate, but it also, based upon weather and local air pressure, it changes. So your start and stop might be actually at the wrong elevation. So you're starting and stopping at the wrong one, but it's more accurate in the middle, right? As opposed to getting the NASA data, which is accurate as far as where you start and where you end, but the middle is a little more variance because it's not as granular, right? It's actually just it's called the Shuttle Radar Topography Mission data, the SRTM data. It's only so accurate, and then depending upon where you are, it's accurate in different places. So, like in the U.S., it's more accurate. It's more accurate closer to cities. It's more accurate, and then like the U.S. pays for the shuttle, so they don't get the high resolution data and give it over to Europe, right? It's here. And so that it varies on location there too. So when people ask about elevation, it's like, okay, here we go. With the explanation, it's like, so yeah, it's an interesting topic. You can probably I wrote the elevation service. I've dealt with this programmatically for years. And so it's an interesting problem to solve from a developer standpoint.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, just I think, most of us don't think about the difference between, elevation coming from barometric or some satellite, or I'm just like, I don't know, some magic in that box that tells me how many feet I climb, like.
Yeah. I didn't even mention satellite triangulation. Yeah. And then that gets blocked by cliffs. And yeah, there's so many things at play, but yeah.
So would you say then the devices are like way better than the phones, or would you say that some of the new phones are like the new iPhone or the new whatever, Google phone or something like that? Are those like super accurate, or do you think that the Garmin or the Wahoo kind of devices still have an upper hand there?
So the I'm not sure about the Wahoo exactly, but a lot of the Garmin units will use barometric air pressure. So that's always going to be your most granular accuracy. And then if you actually look at the Garmin data, they do the same smoothing, right? You can tell that the data, even though you went a certain distance, they'll use the same elevation point for multiple points along the route because they understand that up and down moving. And so they manipulate that data too. Like I don't say manipulate, but they smooth it, and so it's more accurate. It actually ends up being more true to life, and so it makes sense to do that. But as far as tracing your track, the Garmin units tend to be better because that's such a priority for them, right? And even Garmin itself, they've gone through different iterations where I remember there were some units that were super accurate, and then they like change their GPS chip, maybe go cheap or something, and then suddenly it wasn't good. It wasn't as good, and we could actually tell that. We could look when we're looking at the recording. I'd be like, "Oh, that guy's got a 501 or whatever." I can always tell. Yeah. And then the watches, like the Phoenixes, were generally really poor early on. Now they're just as good as the Garmin, the Edge units. They're like the Phoenix.
Yeah,
they're actually like just as good, and we can tell. Because we can look at the heat map and then we can do a standard deviation by looking at the devices and seeing how much they vary from the averages, from real life averages.
So in the data that you get from Garmin or wherever, it's also like in that GPX file is also the hardware that it's taken with.
Yeah. So so we don't pull the elevation from our service unless we have to. So if the Garmin sends it along or Strava sends it along, which they typically do, we get that data from there, and then we just use that in the ride log. So, but there's a lot of cases where it doesn't come along, recording in the app. We need to get it from our elevation service, or sometimes the apps will use, sometimes the phones will have triangulation. I think I have to check with latest APIs, but we don't, some of the data comes and we have to complement it, put our data, our elevation data with it. But sometimes, a lot of times it just comes from the app, comes from the units. And then the elevation data coming from the units is always really good. It's better than what we can do because just, again, the satellite, the SRTM data, the data that comes from NASA is not very granular. In a lot of places, it's like one elevation point every 30 meters. That's what you get.
Yeah. That's not very accurate.
Not very good.
Yeah. So I've only used TrailForks in the US, and assuming that you guys also had some of your beginnings in Canada, there would be some pretty strong places to look for trails. How is it the experience internationally? Is it just as like populated in Europe or Asia or?
Yeah, Asia is a little spotty. Europe's actually really, really good. The difficulty with Europe is kind of depends on where you are. But like if you're talking about the UK, a lot of the trails are illegal there. Like a lot of them are social trails. There's a lot, so that's a little more difficult. They have some great stuff there though. We have some really good administrators in Spain and Italy, Pyrenees, and the Alps, and they keep that updated. So you can go all across Europe and just have really great data. New Zealand and Australia also really good. And when we were at Sea Otter, we had one of the trail builders from Australia come up to our booth and said, yeah, I talked to the Forest Service in Australia, and I keep telling them, you just got to make TrailForks the single source of data for all your forestry government data, because they've got all the trails and your government data is garbage.
Yeah.
So it's really good. Yeah.
How do you deal with like the different regulations and laws from different countries? Is it all from just the local administrator? Because like, for instance, Scotland, they have the right to roam. So you're allowed to like ride wherever you want,
Yeah.
I don't know how that plays out, as far as what's legal and what's not,
Yeah, it's totally
with a group of 7 people, I'm sure like not one of you is like the geographical lawyer, you know what I mean? Like,
no, you're right. Yeah. But yeah, so again, it's all a regional thing. And we do get interesting requests from all over the world to remove data. And the funnier ones, our content managers will send it over to us and kind of throw it on our Slack when they think it's like funny. Like they'll get stuff like, we have a nuclear base and it's on your map. Can you remove it? Like we don't want people to see that. Yeah, for whatever reason, security or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, yeah, that's just our like satellite imagery. Like we don't, you gotta have to talk to somebody else for that.
Yeah.
But we get all these kind of crazy requests from places, but the regional admins are really good. They do all the internationalization, so the translating, so you can use the app and switch your language to a bunch of languages, like 15, I think we have now. So they update that and keep that pretty well updated. We have a really nice interface kind of on our website where for these admins where they can go into and just see all the translations and which ones are missing, so they can fill in text and that kind of thing. They keep it up to date really, really well there. Go look at it. You just go on the map, go check out the Pyrenees, go check out the Alps. I was in Spain a while back using it. It's kind of cool to see some of the mountains near the coast there on there. And yeah.
Do you guys have plans for like integration for something similar to how you can pan around on Google and be somewhere and like see what it looks like?
A
street view kind of thing,
Yeah, a lot of that kind of is the 3D tech kind of comes typically with that. We wouldn't go do that in house because that's just like that's big R&D 3D work. So we would just utilize a library for that. Like we'd use Mapbox or whatever, libraries. I haven't played with the 3D Mapbox stuff that much right now, but I think they're doing a lot of that kind of stuff, like what you're talking about, pretty good. And so we'll pull that in and use that for sure.
Yeah. What do you see for the future? What does like TrailForks look like to you 10 years or 15 years from now?
Oh man, wow. I don't know how much I can talk about like new features in the pipe or stuff that we have on the.
I understand where you're coming from there.
But I'm trying to think what I can, say right now. What again, our overriding goal really is to just get people having a good time out on the trail. So we're trying to use a lot of the anonymized data to just try and really better characterize the trail so people really know what they're going to get to. And so that when they get out there, they know what's going to give them the best experience. And so that's kind of how we're doing our features, right? So like we have some really cool layers that kind of show stuff like flow and direction. And we really want people to be able to get on the trail no matter where they are. They look at the app and they're just like, oh, what do I do now? And the app does everything to tell them.
I think the direction is really key. I really, there's some local spots that I ride that typically I tell people like, hey, if you want to go here, your first couple of times you have to go with a guide, because you're going to pick the wrong direction, and you could do that over and over again and have a horrible day, or you could go with somebody that knows their way around and like think that place is awesome, So I think that's definitely a key matrix to see.
Yeah, we do have flow, the trail flow on the website, where it shows you the arrows, but it was kind of built more as a tool for builders so they could see which direction people were riding and where they might have congestion spots and whether the underlying data was correct and that kind of thing. Like, this trail's primary, but it's going the wrong direction or whatever like that. But we're recrafting that to be more like you get to a location and it's going to be like, oh, you want to go this way with a high probability. This way is bi-directional. Go this, that's where everyone's riding. There's these directions. And so those kinds of things we want to more externalize. We also want to build in more tools for our search and rescue to help people have a good experience, even when they're not having a good experience. Right. We do have a search and rescue interface, but there's a lot more we could do with it to really help.
So that's a separate interface for the actual search and rescue teams, or is that for somebody that's trying to get rescued?
Yeah. So what you may or may not know is in our app, we have a emergency button, 911. You've probably seen it. It's kind of big and red. And it based upon depending on what location you're in the US, so it'd be 911, right? What you don't realize is that if you click that, if there's a local search and rescue in the area, they will know that you clicked it and where you are, right? But they're not going to know you. All they're going to know is they'll look on a map and say, oh, somebody might be in an emergency right now at this location. And the whole point of that is so that if somebody calls, it's ready to go. They know where it is, right? They're right there. And we have several places. So
it doesn't send somebody. It's not like you click
they're not going to send anybody. Nobody knows who it is. It's completely anonymous. It's just like bing, it's just a blip. So if somebody calls and says, hey, I crashed or whatever, I need help. Or if somebody reports, oh, somebody was missing, and it's all time-based, right? So that pings, and then after a while it goes away. It's enough. It's not recorded. It's not kept. So so we have search and rescue, but we want to expand that to be more like creating group search events, and you can track who's looking for who to find who's already passed what location they've already looked, so they know what they've covered, so they make sure they found the person, those kinds of things. There's several trail associations that use it now, and 2 of us on the team have been rescued by it, which is kind of
wow.
I overshot a gap and landed in the next jump and had to use it. And the Radek, the founder of Pink Bike, used it when he lost control before a gap and then flew into the side of the.
Oh no, that's crazy.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, I had that thing turned on in my Garmin that like texts your family or whoever you had in there.
Oh yeah,
and I didn't know what it did or how I like generally knew what it did, but I didn't know how to react to it. So the first time that I had an accident and it was like, like I'm upside down in this freaking bush, right? So I'm like, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing this like sonar ping. I'm like, what the hell is that?
You actually crashed. You actually crashed and it went off.
Yeah. It was like, because they have like it's a crash detection in the Garmin, right? Yeah. And so like by the time I finally realized it was my Garmin that was like dinging, I'm at like I'm looking at it like 3, 2, and I'm like, I don't know how to stop it. Right. You just start pushing all the buttons, panicking. And then like next thing you know, the lady's calling me. She's like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know. I hope it didn't call 911.
Right. Yeah, I've had 2 calls, one from my wife, one from my brother. It's like, I just got this message. Like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just dumped my bike over to like stop and get some water. I was like, nothing. It was nothing. I've never actually had it crash and do anything. It's happened on my watch too. I was like fishing and I slipped and just just for a sec, I didn't fall even, but then suddenly it was calling my wife and it was crazy.
Yeah. So I turned it off. I feel like it's probably gonna be like bite me in the ass someday.
Well, maybe turn it on when you're doing like some mega epic in the middle of nowhere.
Something sketchy,
and
right?
You're gone for like 9 hours.
Right. So speaking of middle of nowhere, I went on a ride in an area that was less than mapped last year. And we ended up, because the people we were with, we knew like, hey, there's a creek over here by this trail, or there's a big water pool or something like that we were using we were filtering water.
Okay.
I have something on TrailForks that is like water sources that like are pins for water sources.
Yeah, we do. And we do have a water source. And so like where I live here, I live next to American Fork Canyon, and there's probably 4 springs all around the canyon. You can actually go there and ride all day and never bring a water bottle if you know exactly where they are. And I added them all on there. And for a long time, it was this little tiny droplet of water, and you could barely see it. But we just changed it. So you should be able to see it better. But again, still, people have to add those. So we've been, and a lot of people didn't know about it. So people have been adding them, and we add them when we can. But if you know some, add them.
Yeah. So it's community based.
Yeah. One difficulty you run into that is, like for instance, during COVID, a ton of them were turned off. They just turned off all the water fountains. And so it's like, oh, there's a water fountain here. No, there's like tape around it. You can't get it. And then like in AF Canyon, there was a really dry summer, and 2 of them were just totally dried up. And one of them just like tasted like dirt and some mold. So I was like, you can't eat that. But normally all 4 just gushing, crystal clear water. You can just drink right out of it. So that it makes me a little nervous. I think what we might want to do is maybe add some more details to these POIs, like seasonal or intermittent.
Like needs filtered or something like that.
Yeah, we've had.
I guess you could get into an issue where like, is this potable? Like I thought it was, and they were just telling me that, hey, there's water there. Like you got to freaking know that.
Yeah, that's a good. This kind of thing is generally more important to backcountry hikers and through hikers doing like the PCT. And so it's something we've heard a lot more about as we've added national.
That's kind of the area that I was riding in. Let's just say that. So,
yeah, it's a good idea. Non-potable, intermittent, all good things we should add to that. We've had the water feature in our app for a long time for race courses because people have water zones, right? We have 2 ways. There's like aid stations, which typically means like somebody standing there with like, I don't know, bars and things to eat. Yeah. And then also like water, but then sometimes there's just like water only stations. And so we've always had that differentiation, but it's not used as much maybe.
So and then, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the other thing about water sources is there's like in some places you're crossing a stream every 10 feet. It gets ridiculous. Yeah. And then there's waterfall. So we could probably refine that a little bit. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you go to Oregon's trail map and it's just a big water. Yeah. Big water drop everywhere. You're like, okay.
Bring your canoe. Bring your snorkel.
Right. So you were mentioning the race stuff. So is that like the race coordinator, like they reach out to you and then the riders just can bring up the actual course and you can see all the other riders if they're starting their stuff on there? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's just for courses, but anytime you create a race course, there's a thing where you can mark on there that it is specifically a race course. And then once you do that, what happens is it'll automatically come to the Garmin under races. So if you're lining up for a race, it's just easy to get to it and quickly to see it. Just go show me the local races and it'll show you them. And then you grab the course, then it'll load up in your Garmin. It'll also load on the app. So a lot of times people just want to use it for pre-riding. They're not necessarily even use it, or they just want to see the course online. And then on the app, they'll take it so they can go pre-ride the course and go see. When I used to mountain bike race cross country, I used to always pre-ride because it makes a world of difference if it's
totally.
You don't know. And so especially on the downhill sections and knowing where the pass zones are and things. So so pre-riding is really huge. And then for really big races, we'll do things like here they have the Park City point to point. And it's such a long race that we actually created 4 courses. One is just the course, and then the other 3 are the 3 training segments. So they're the 3 parts, so you can go up and experience each part and see what they all are, and then you'll kind of piece it together on race day. It's not a race you want to do you don't want to pre-ride the whole thing. Maybe you do, I don't know, but you wouldn't want to do it right before the race. You know what I mean? Like it's a really long, hard race. So, and then we provide all these other things in there, like time zones and the feed zones and start and stuff. And then POIs are associated just with the race course route itself. So for instance, if you put a feed zone or a parking spot, that might not be parking all the time. It might just be race day parking, right? So specifically can associate that. Like you can even draw a polygon and be like, this is wherever all the people are camping or whatever, right? It's really good for race courses. And it really solves a lot of their problems. You get these small outfits that are like, hey, I'm going to do this race. I don't have a full-time GIS staff to do this stuff, right? So you can we can help you, or people can go just create the course on there. And then we also provide print material. So you can go into our printing facility. There's a print tool under our tools, and you can highlight the course, get the course on there, and print flyers, print media, print PDFs, print, make a little graphic any size you want for social media of your course. And it's just all free. Any event coordinator or event person can do it, and we'll even help you at it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you guys run into any kind of issues, seeing as how you're kind of linked with Garmin and Strava, if you wanted to bring out features that were similar to their products?
There's a lot of overlap of features. So the question is,
so like, would there be something where Strava would be like, hey, we don't like that you're doing that, we're not going to give you our data anymore, or something like that?
Right. Well, yeah, we there are certain things that Strava really does well that we don't ever have plans to do, like their segment stuff, right? And they're very social on their site. Like, you comment and you on someone's ride. We kind of have that facility. Like we've had it from a long time, from the beginning, but we don't, that's kind of Strava's thing. And we kind of just add it there for people who want to comment on someone's site, so that the facility's there. We don't really push it. We don't even market it or sell it. It's there, but that's really kind of Strava's thing. I actually think we're really like a good complement to Strava as far as having very specific trail information, difficulty levels, and all those kinds of things. And so, but there's little overlaps here and there between a lot of these products, and we kind of just all like, even our staff, we're all huge Strava users. You know what I mean? Like if you go look at any one of the people on our staff, you can go see we've all been using it forever and post pictures and record, and we sync and all that. So we find the utility in all of these together. So
I need to get those guys on the podcast, man. I got a list of features for them.
I mean, I used to submit features to Strava on their forums for years, like do this, do that, and
you know what bothers me the most is when it tells you have a PR, it doesn't show you your second and third on the same screen.
Oh yeah, that's
like, so then you're always like, you're like, go back, you look at your attempts, and you're, oh well, my second and third is the same time, or like, oh well, my second place is like a minute away from that. Holy shit, I killed it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I feel like that is such a simple thing that should just be right there. So if you know anybody at Strava.
I don't actually. We have contacts there, but
no. Well, man, we're wrapping up. We're like right here at 2 hours. I really appreciate the time that you took to sit down and chat. It was really fun, and I learned a lot about TrailForks. I'm sure that the audience did as well, and so it was definitely a great conversation. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. It's fun. I again, like we're all developers. We don't often get the chance to just like talk about this app we created. We just love it. We love to talk about it. I don't know if you talk to me in Sedona, but it's like, I'm always so excited to talk about it, but mostly we're just heads down, just what features put in here,
I always ask people at the end of the show, you watch YouTube?
Do I watch YouTube?
Yeah, for
sure.
So what channels do you like to watch, even if it doesn't have anything to do with mountain biking? Because it's always interesting to like hear some different content that you maybe didn't know about.
Let's see. So I have a bunch of YouTube channels that I watch for all these mountain bikers, but I often kind of know who they are, but they just pop up on my feed because either I subscribe and if the picture looks cool, I'll watch it. Right.
Yeah.
And then we have local people. So like there's a local guy that I know, does MTB Yum Yum. Like I'll watch his stuff sometimes.
Yeah, he does a lot of bike reviews.
Yeah, he does a lot of bike reviews. Sometimes he rides. I'm actually in a couple of his ride videos.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, except because he rides around here, like here, and so I'll watch him.
He's like St. George area, right? Or
no, he's here in Lehigh-ish, like Utah County area where I am.
Yeah, I don't know where that is. So like Salt Lake-ish or something, or
yeah, Salt Lake area. Yeah, like
okay,
Salt Lake City.
I was remembering it wrong. I think I just remember some specific video that he must have done down in St. George then. So
yeah, probably. Yeah. So I'll watch that. And of course I'll watch pink bike stuff like Friday fails and all that kind of stuff. That's like kind of my fun thing.
So mostly mountain bike content is what you like.
But I also do kind of the bike and bass. So I like to fish. So I kayak fish too. So a lot of times when I'm going up to Park City, I'll strap the kayak to the top of my car. I'll go ride till I'm tired, and then I'll launch off into the kayak on my way down at the reservoir. So I come home so I do that too. So I'll watch some fishing videos sometimes, like 618 fishing and some stuff like that.
Right on.
Yeah, I guess.
Good stuff, dude. It's always fun. It's always fun hearing different channels. There's always some ones that come up in conversation where you're like, that sounds really fun to listen to, or to watch. There's so much content out there. So I always like asking that. It's just a fun question. So don't feel like you passed the test, man.
Yeah, I watch just a huge. And the other thing is that we have all, like you've seen on these lists, all these YouTubers that are all on TrailForks listing, and so I subscribe to all of them, like everyone on TrailForks. So I just get so many, So there's like Pedaling Dave out in the, like I'll watch some of his stuff. He's like, I don't know, he's neat, like Midwest kind of stuff, and I'll watch, and then some of the bigger ones, some of the big real popular ones.
Right.
I'm having like brain, but I can remember the names. But yeah, it's
yeah. No worries, man. Right on. Well, like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time. Anybody that is listening and hasn't seen TrailForks, definitely swing by the website, trailforks.com. It's spelled exactly the way it sounds. You could search the app on the app stores, download the app. You can use it for free for your general local area, and if you want to get outside of that, then there's a monthly subscription. It is well worth the money. I definitely do not think that you should be upset about paying the couple of bucks a month if you like to use the app, especially if you travel and ride away from your local area. It's really key, and you can be out in the middle of the woods and you can know whether or not you're making the right turn or the wrong right turn. So definitely swing by, check out their app. If you are not subscribed to this channel and you're watching it on YouTube, please hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up if you like this video. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, like maybe Apple Podcast, do me a favor and write a review, a 5-star review. If you don't want to write a 5-star review, don't waste your time. It's probably not worth it. Anyways, I really appreciate Todd being on here and chatting with us, and all of you out there. Remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker, so get out and be one.